Welcome to Wilder Wolves, Hall of Fame mode fandom. My name is Wilder Adams, and this episode is all about reacting to the first back-to-back at home this season. The Minnesota Timberwolves, they defeat the Indiana Pacers and then get defeated by the Denver Nuggets last night. And this episode, of course, to react to the first couple home games, I'm joined by Andrew Dukowitz, who is a pretty awesome Timberwolves journalist for Zone Coverage. We need to get him in so we can kind of, I guess, just feel the temperature of the room after the Anthony Edwards injury and the fact they can't guard a cone right now. So, Andrew, how's it going?
Good, man. 8:30 starts, never my favorite thing in the world, but we are in mid-season form and we press on.
Yep, it is only the start, and I'm already praying for this routine 7 o'clock home game because night one we got the 6 o'clock game, almost missed that game, and then last night 8:30, now sleep deprived. So we haven't won yet the first two home games, except the technically we did win the Indiana game. But so Andrew, we now we saw those two games. Now we have a much more clear picture with the Anthony Edwards situation going to be out the next couple weeks with the hamstring situation. So before we really get into the Anthony Edwards stuff, I would love to hear your general takeaways on the first two home games when watching this team.
Yeah, I mean, it looked like a team that didn't have their star player. First game against Indiana, Julius Randle really kind of willed them to win more than anything else. Of course, the game gets a little close in the fourth quarter, but for all extensive purposes, like a solid win for the Wolves against, a team playing mostly their backups. But yeah, again, it's hard to judge what this team looks like when Anthony Edwards is a 30% usage, high volume shooter that is kind of playing the de facto point guard role, at least in like initiating the offense. Him and Julius have been kind of splitting that. So a good win is what I'd say. Again, I think some fans would have liked to see them win by like 20 or 30, but again, Ant goes down and they did what they needed to. The Nuggets game, I mean, I'll just be honest. They played maybe one quarter of good basketball, that being the second quarter.
Mm-hmm.
Third quarter, the wheels kind of fell off. I mean, what I will say is, this is almost like a scheduled loss that you throw in your system. You're playing the third game in 4 days, if you include that Lakers game. Jokic and Murray are phenomenal. Aaron Gordon started the season really good, and it's the second end of a back-to-back, and you don't have Anthony Edwards.
Yeah.
I thought there was a lot of encouraging things to take from it offensively. Jaden McDaniels especially got going. Julius looked like he was playing really well in the first half. Mike looked pretty good the last two games, honestly. But at the end of the day, you're playing a Nuggets team that is a little bit fresher, and you have a probably four-time MVP in Jokic when it's all said and done, maybe a five-time MVP in Jokic, and Jamal Murray just went off. So yes, there's things to nitpick on. Yes, there's things to be frustrated with, the defense especially. Yes, there's things that the Wolves certainly could have done better and potentially won that game. But when the schedule comes out, that's one of those games that you kind of look at. And even if the Wolves had Jalen Clark, were at full strength, that would have been a tough one for them to pull out. So 2-2, that's kind of, I think I would have expected them to be 3-1, especially once LeBron went down. But this was the game I kind of pegged for them to lose out of those four.
Yeah, I'm not really feeling as strongly about my 15-5 prediction start right now with what we've seen and the Anthony Edwards situation, of course, but I do think that was the right way to frame it. It did feel like a team missing a top 5 player in the league. That's what it looks like, especially late in the fourth quarter against Denver. I'm not sure what the exact score was. It was like 101, 1-1. It was really close in that range. And then we saw Minnesota like multiple turnovers in a row and then give up a three, give up a three. Then all of a sudden it's 111, 101 and we have nobody really to slow down the pace at the end of the game. So That was concerning a little bit, but also kind of what comes with the territory. When you watch that Denver Nuggets game, I think my biggest takeaway, if you're going to complain, because I think the offense was pretty much what we could have expected in that game, and I thought it was quite good against Indiana. What did you just think about the defensive detail there? Because I think that's the theme from the start of the season, notably the Lakers game and then the Nuggets game to an extent, because not only is it you're playing great offenses with great players and Luka and Jokic who can be physical, could create advantages with their physicality and ability to read over defenders, but also it just feels like the team is missing really easy rotations right now. Tim Hardaway, he just had like the entire county of space for three, like 4 times in the game. And then obviously the Lakers game, I don't know what the heck that was. So, what's your temperature on where Minnesota stands defensively and just listening to Chris Finch and other people who didn't seem very happy about it either? What do you feel like?
Yeah, I mean, no one was particularly happy with it. Jaden, after the game, we got to talk to him in the locker room, and he had just kind of said, like, we're not communicating enough, we're not connected enough, and that's kind of what it looked like. I mean, it was a lot of missed like rotations. There's a few times where like, you could just tell like Bones Highland is out there guarding a pick and roll, and it's like I when the Wolves opened the season, Bones Highland covering Jamal Murray on a pick and roll probably wasn't in their cards. And when that happens, you have players compensating, whether that's Jalen Clark, whether that's Julius Randle, whether that's whoever, to try and slow down Jamal, and then he kicks it over to Hardaway Jr. or someone else who gets a wide open three, and it kind of goes on. I that's the vibe I got. I thought Jaden was pretty just honest about it, of just this team needs to get a little bit better at communicating on defense, especially without Ant there. The other thing that was a theme in the locker room afterwards was just the pick and roll coverage of, you know, I think it was a pretty drastic shift from last year when you have Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who is so
Yeah.
good at getting small, sliding in between the screen and the guard, getting up into his defender. And then you have TJ Shannon, Jaden McDaniels, even to some extent like Dante DiVincenzo, who were more just like waiting on the other side of the screen.
Yeah.
And Finch talked about it, of like, you can't give these guys a head of steam into the middle of the defense. Rudy talked about it, of just like, when you're not on their hip coming off of that screen, it puts him on a 2-versus-1 situation going to the rim. And like, not only does he need to guard the roll man, he also might need to come up and pressure the shooter if they're not close enough. And he was the only person that really could grab a rebound last night. So like, that's way too much pressure on Rudy in that sense. Again, 4 games in, I give this team probably more passes right now than maybe other people would or fans would.
Mhm.
But, Anthony Edwards is going to mean so much to this team, especially in those late game pick and rolls, because he is able to kind of outmuscle a screen, stay with him a little better, get small and go in between those gaps. Jalen Clark also missed tonight. I think with Ant out, Jalen's probably the like go to, hey, we need to stop this guy guard defender. And I mean, if there's not a whole lot defensively Jaden's not good at, but like, getting in between a screen and the ball handler is something that he struggles with, which he's 7 feet tall. I mean, not many 7-footers can do that. So I mean, it was certainly a problem. I mean, you look at their second half net rating, or their second half defensive rating last night. I believe it was almost 200. Let me bring that up here quick. Uh yeah, second half defensive rating was 140. And if you look at the third quarter exclusively, it was 187.5. Generally, an average defensive rating is like 112, 115. So when
Mhm.
you're getting into the 180s, like, that is awful. I mean, there's no other way to put it. But again, you're without your star player, you're without your best guard defender. You are playing the second end of a back-to-back in the second half against a team that really wanted that. I mean, the Nuggets haven't won in Minneapolis in 2 years.
Yeah. Not since the Biden administration.
Exactly. I mean, I think you give this team a little bit of grace in that sense. They've proven that they can start seasons slow and kind of lock in once everything clicks. And if there's one other thing that I kind of gleaned from these first two games is that, they still sometimes are coming into these games maybe not prepared as much as they should, which Jaden mentioned that after the game as well, as he wasn't ready to play today, which I appreciate the honesty, but like that is a phrase that we heard a lot last season. And this is going to be a team that isn't going to be able to just flip the switch on in the postseason because they need to get better seeding than sixth this year.
You said two things that really stood out to me. Number one, going back to the Nikhil thing, I think that's a really good insight. We are definitely seeing what are the downsides of not having a Nikhil Alexander Walker on this team because as much as this team is still pretty long and you have all these like athletes and everything still, like Nikhil just had like a pressure to him and a willingness to like get high and stay persistent that not nobody really else has on the roster. And at this point, because Shannon hasn't played great one, but also number two hasn't had the reins to do it or just to play 24 minutes. Like he hasn't been able to replace Nikhil. I mean, Jaden definitely hasn't been able to replace Nikhil, and you're also asking him to do that against players who aren't necessarily his best defensive matchup, in my opinion. Like obviously Luka Doncic, but also Jamal Murray in a Nikola Jokic pick and roll to another extent. So I think I think the matchups have really exposed a lot of the weaknesses of this defense, but then also just the nature of not having that high ball pressure guy. I think that's really stood out. And then number two, weren't we going into training camp this year, like talking about like we're going to be these grown-ups and attention to detail and defense and preparation and all of this? And I haven't seen any of that yet. Like the Lakers, like it looks like they spent the night hanging out, enjoying LA before the Lakers game. That's what it looks like. And then last night, it's like, can anybody make a defensive rotation to save their life? And you mentioned it, Rudy Gobert, there was a ton of pressure on him. You look at his stats and you wonder, why did he only have 4 rebounds? And a part of that is definitely Nikola Jokic has to be better against people who can match his physicality like a Jokic, but also he's kind of moving out of his natural positions because he's trying to compensate for what's being lacked at the point of attack and pick and rolls. And when you have Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic operating a pick and roll, there's not a more deadly pairing. So it's like, okay, how does he win here either? So I think that's been the you don't want to like panic and say it's the end of the world but it is really it's a little unfortunate that a lot of the things that they've been so adamant verbally about addressing and they were saying all the right things that nothing's really changed. Is that too far?
I would push back a little bit. Like
Okay.
they are 2-2. I
It's not
mean,
bad. Not. I'll say one thing real quick. I'm not
yeah.
saying like it won't change at all. I'm not saying it's the
Mhm.
end of the world. I'm just saying like usually I don't know about you, but like if let's say I change and I have a diet, right? Usually the first week I do pretty good about the diet, and then I kind of fall apart, right? Like they're already eating the Cheetos, and it's been 6 hours. That's what it feels like sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, I would say a couple things. Like the Lakers game, I didn't think their defense was too bad against in the Lakers game. Like Doncic hit at least 4 threes with like a hand in his face where the
Mhm.
ball almost gets blocked and he just drills it coming like off the screen. I don't know what you do when Luka's on a heater. You look at the Portland game, I thought again there was some things that were kind of annoying, but like overall, this is a Portland team that has professionals. Drew Holiday's a really good player. Jeremy Grant is like he's been a borderline all-star most of his career. Tamani Kamara is like a metrics darling in the basketball nerd world. Like they are a better team than what their end record will
I
probably
agree.
suggest.
Hmm.
Pacers was frustrating, but again, Ant goes down 3 minutes in. I
Yeah.
mean, that's that's just a hard thing to navigate, right? Like when you were expecting to go in, you have your entire game plan centered around Ant, and then all of a sudden he is done and in street clothes. Like I think even the best teams get a little bit of shell shock from that. And then the Nuggets game was the game that, again, like that's concerning that, there wasn't the attention to detail on defense. It's concerning that that third quarter went pear shaped, like as fast as it did and
Yeah.
like as bad as it did. But again, second end of a back to back, no Anthony Edwards, no Jalen Clark. You're missing both of your best perimeter defenders. Jaden's having to guard Jamal Murray on just pick and roll after pick and roll. You mentioned it, Rudy having to play up more. Just it's hard for him to get rebounds when he is playing at above the free throw line, has to turn around, and like you already have someone in your chest. You know, it, again, I'm very slow to panic. I remember last year, kind of during the low start, I was the same way of like, it takes me about 40 games before I am willing to say like, oh, this is the team. These are the trends. These are the things that are concerning. The defense right now is concerning. And I would say the most concerning part of it is when Rudy Gobert is off the floor. This is a historically bad defense.
Yeah.
When Rudy comes
Yeah.
off the floor, they rank 30th this year, 30th last year, 30th the year before. Like their defense is abhorrent. When Rudy comes off the floor, their offense ranks first in the league. So, I mean, they get the bump offensively, but you cannot go from, I believe they're seventh on the floor when Rudy is playing to 30th, and their offense goes from like 14th to first. Like that 7 to 30 drop is like that can't happen. So that's either Naz Reid has to elevate like his defensive game, which again, willing to give him a pass the first quarter of the season or so. Like I know he
Yeah.
came to camp not in the best shape. Mentally, he's had to go through a lot. I mean, navigating the loss of his older sister, like that is
Mhm.
I can't imagine losing your older sister and then a week later having to go up and like to Minnesota and shoot free throws. Like that's just
Yeah.
training camp doesn't seem fair. If you were in any other job, you'd be on bereavement for a month to like process it. So again, with Nas, I'm not going to sit here and other than saying it hasn't been good, I'm not going to read too much into it. I would assume Nas, as he gets in game shape and gets kind of more into his own rhythm, just like in life, um, hopefully that defense will get better. But TJ Shannon has not been good defensively. You look at Dante, has not been particularly good defensively. Mike, the first two games, could not stop fouling. And then Rob has not been good in his 15 minutes of defense. So you take Ant and Jalen off the team. Of course, their defense is going to be terrible, especially when
Yeah.
Rudy's not in. So again, I'm not too concerned about it. I think there's a world where, Ant doesn't get injured and they're 3-1. I think there's a world where, they lose that Pacers game and they're 1-3. This is probably just the aggregate of those two worlds. And now the Wolves thankfully have a pretty easy stretch, right? The Lakers without Luka or LeBron, Charlotte, Brooklyn, Utah, Sacramento, all coming up on the schedule. Like this is a good time for Ant to be injured.
I will say this, I've watched too much Timberwolves basketball to think anything's an easy schedule. Oh my gosh, I can't predict anything with this team, so I don't know. I'm kind of more scared of the Charlotte Hornets than I am of the Oklahoma City Thunder sometimes with the way this team has operated in the past. But no, I think everything you're saying is absolutely true. And I think on one hand, sometimes you have a picture of how the story should be written. And then there's just, there's curveballs, there's downs, and you just have to adjust and accept the unpredictability of it. You can't predict an ant injury. Some things will exceed your expectations, some will lower your expectations. And I think one part that feels lower is I do think, even though it's an easy stretch and it's technically true, it's good Ant is out. If fate said he had to miss 8 games, this is a fine time to miss 8 games. It is a little unfortunate that at a time of the year when some teams are getting stuff figured out, that you can't really most likely get really ahead of it, just in case if you need a mid-season cushion. But yeah, I think the Rudy thing's really interesting too because, we're 4 years into this, and I think it's what you're getting. You're getting one of the best defenses in the league and a very underwhelming offense with them on the court. And now on the contrary, when he's off the court defensively, it's 134 and a half defensive rating. So I'm kind of wondering a little bit, is there a world that this can get figured out with Rudy Gobert offensively? Do you think that door's shut? Like, what do you think with that?
I think this Wolves team, especially, like since he has gotten traded here, has been very, they're even in Utah. I'll phrase it this way: like even in Utah, like they talked about unlocking Rudy Gobert, right? And there are certain things that Rudy is very good at. Like he is an excellent lob finisher. When he has position on offense, he's a great offensive rebounder. He can get putbacks. And to be honest, in the short roll, when you get a pick and roll like inside the 3-point arc and he just turns his hips and dives to the basket, like he is a well above average finisher, and he like makes the right decision. Like even his turnover ratio, like on those type of plays, isn't it's average. Like it's not bad. I think the issue with Rudy is when he makes mistakes, they are loud mistakes. When he's on the short roll and he gets that one turnover a game that he will get, like it will happen. There will be that one turnover. It's like off his hands and he kicks it into the fifth row, or it hits him in the chin and then goes some like directly into the defense's hands. He's also going to miss a close basket and it's going to look terrible. Like he's going to jump up from 3 feet away and throw it off the backboard and not hit the rim. And like, I think if that turnover was him taking a dribble and trying to do like a spin move and it just got picked, maybe he gets the ball more, even though it's the same amount of turnovers. Just one of them sticks in even the players' heads more, and it sticks in the fans' heads. Same with his like shooting ability. If he had a touch where it just rolls out of the rim and it looked like it was good and it missed instead of slamming it off the backboard, probably gets a little bit more of those opportunities. And unfortunately, like this is a team that, if Rudy has those mistakes early in the game, they just stop looking for him. And that's something that Finch talks about a lot, of like, we need to keep Rudy involved in the offense. Like we saw it last year in the playoffs against the Lakers, where Rudy single-handedly pretty much wins a game by just the team using him on pick and rolls. I mean, he didn't do anything different. They just used him. So it's hard to like solve that problem because the players all say the right thing. Like Ant says the right thing, Jaden says the right thing, Julius says the right thing. Got to get the big man involved, reward him, like hit him on those lobs, hit him on those short rolls, let him kind of move the offense. And again, you saw it in the first half of that Denver game where he's getting involved. And then in the third quarter, there's a couple possessions where it looks bad. And all of a sudden he is completely iced out of the offense.
Yep.
I don't know how to fix that. I mean, it's now been 4 years of that trend, whether it was D'Lo, whether it was, whether it was D'Lo, whether it was young Ant, current Ant, Jaden, like it's just a trend now that's going to happen. And again, when everyone says the right thing, when Finch is sitting there blasting his players after the game of like, hey, I mean, especially after the playoffs last year, like he did not mince words. He was like, hey, you guys are missing easy baskets by just ignoring Rudy. Again, it seems crazy to sit here and argue that we need more Rudy Gobert in this offense, because that is probably not the hidden efficiency that's going to unlock this team. But like, if Rudy shot the ball 8 times a game instead of like 3, if it was just consistently 8 or higher, this team's probably significantly better on offense, just because then the defense has to guard it. Then you can justify keeping him on the floor more. And I mean, he does play better in games where he is getting the ball on offense, his defense goes up another level. So does Jaden, so does everyone else. So again, it's hard because the team knows that's an issue. They want to address that issue, but I think just as we as fans and as reporters, when we see that turnover and the whole stadium groans, I think that seeps into the players too, where it's like, well, I'm not going to go to that guy. Like, look what he just did.
It kind of feels like the Jaden McDaniels route or the Jaden McDaniels pattern the past few years. Like when Jaden gets 10 shots, they are nearly unstoppable.
Yep.
And I think it's the same thing with the Rudy thing, right? Because if Rudy's getting the ball efficiently, that's a really good sign of great ball movement. Because if he's efficient with the ball, that likely means he's getting it in efficient spots. And if he's getting to efficient spots on high volume, then that means the offense is well orchestrated. So I think that is definitely key. And also just like looking at what Minnesota can do without Anthony Edwards these next 8 games. I'm very hesitant to look at the schedule and say they can stumble and go 5-3. I've seen too much with this team on this, but I think starting with the Rudy thing, how important do you think it is that he's involved these next 8 games, especially now that there's really no primary player? And it feels like, as good as Julius Randle is, as much as I like Jaden, it doesn't feel like we have anybody we can necessarily count on at a megastar level to just ride you to wins. How do you think Rudy's involvement will be a part of solving that puzzle?
Yeah, I mean, just one more thing on Rudy, just like in general, because I looked it up here. The Wolves' defensive rating when Rudy Gobert is on the court is 112. When he's off, it's
134.
135.5.
Yeah,
Like, it's like that. That's probably the bigger problem than than the Wolves having to involve him offensively. Like,
for
you
sure.
cannot be a historically bad defense just because the Frenchman goes to the bench. Like, you got to figure that out.
Yeah.
Anyways, Rudy, like, I do think over this time without Ant, like Julius is going to probably have to score 30 most nights if they want to win. Jaden's going to have to be efficient, which he's been showing this season so far. I mean, he's had 3 good offensive games and 1 bad offensive game. Like, he's been fine. And then Rudy does. I mean, they need to use him. I mean, without Ant, there is so much usage to go around. I mean, there's not really any reason not to at least try it. I think Mike being back in the starting lineup just naturally will help Rudy get a little more involved, especially on like the Mike and Rudy pick and rolls, the weird little floater lob thing that they run together. But I mean, honestly, Julius needs to start looking for him. Jaden needs to look for him more consistently. Dante needs to start looking for him on kind of their pick and roll opportunities. And it is, again, it seems crazy to be arguing that more Rudy Gobert will fix some of these problems, but when you have a player that is in the middle of the floor kind of clogging the lanes and he's open on a third of those plays and you're just ignoring him, like, you might as well just put like a traffic cone in the paint and ignore that. It just doesn't make sense, especially given like his advanced numbers, which I know Wolves fans and Utah fans have heard all about the advanced numbers and metrics and screen success and all of that stuff. But like, even the things he's bad at, like finishing at the rim, it sticks out to fans of like, oh my gosh, this guy just can't, he has no touch. Like, he finishes at the rim like greater than 70%. Like, that's a Hall of Fame level finishing. Turnovers, like, he has maybe 1 a game and he's the 3rd highest like minutes getter on this team.
Mm-hmm.
They just got to use them, which we'll see if that happens. I'll be honest, after 4 years of this experience, I'm pretty doubtful that like Ant being out injured will be the thing that changes it. But you know, it's leaving points on the board when you're just missing Rudy Gobert for a dunk.
Rudy's like that one kid because all of us pretty much every single day, we make one mistake a day at least, right?
Yep.
Rudy is like one of those people who has like a pitch perfect day and then he walks into the classroom and then farts in front of all the pretty girls. And that's his
His
one mistake.
his turnovers and his misses are loud misses. And I mean, again, I compare it to like when you're in the Target Center or even like when you're at home watching it on TV, right? Like when Rudy Gobert gets hit on one of those little pocket passes and it is not at chest level and he bends over and it looks awkward and then he knees it out of bounds and he like does his like Rudy Gobert like look back and then walks back on defense, like the entire arena groans. Like I'd wager that most people at home go, "Oh my gosh, Rudy."
Yep.
But like that's his one mistake the entire game. Like he doesn't do that often. And you could say yes, he doesn't do that often because the Wolves aren't passing him the ball, which like fair. That could be the case that if they doubled his usage, he would have more of these type of mistakes. But like we've never even seen it over 4 years. And when they have used him, think of the end of last year and in that closeout game against the Lakers, like he's really good when they do use him. So I do think that just how loud his mistakes are stands out to players too, where you know it's not cool to throw it to the guy that's going to kick it out of bounds.
Now looking at so the Anthony Edwards injury, when you look at the defense, so it's kind of weird because we're talking a lot about the defense in the beginning, but then it kind of became an offensive conversation. When you just look at the formula that needs to occur with the Anthony Edwards injury, what are the main things you're looking at for? So you talked about the Randall thing, we talked about the Rudy thing, like both offense and defense. What do you think are the biggest things we should look for what a successful stretch of that Ant will look like?
Yeah, I mean, defensively, to put it bluntly, like I'm looking for Terrence Shannon Jr. to be better.
Mhm.
I think the Nuggets game was especially concerning of just how easily Jamal Murray was able to get around him at will when they put Terrence Shannon on him to try and be that Nikhil replacement. Terrence also had a couple breakdowns like off ball where whether that's compensating because Bones is on Jamal Murray or whatever it is, like there was some pretty glaring breakdowns. You look in the Pacers game, he didn't play a whole lot, and I would be willing to wager it's probably because of his defense. And even against the Lakers, I mean, Luka kind of had his way when Terrence was on him. So for TJ, like just showing improvements in that area, I would assume he's going to get some shots at Austin Reeves on Wednesday when Jaden's not in the game. Terrence is probably the guy they'll go to unless Jalen Clark is ready to go. And then against some of these, lesser teams like your Charlottes, your Brooklyns, your Utahs, which I mean, let's be honest, Charlotte's playing pretty well right now, but that's who knows where that will go. But like against those teams, that's when you want Terrence to start getting this rhythm of just being able to be kind of a stopping player on defense and not quite as bad. I mean, just to put it bluntly, Bones as well. I think if Bones can get a little better, and what I'll say is like both of these guys look like they are trying on defense. It's not like
Mhm.
these guys are just like low effort losing their guy off ball, like not running hard enough around an off ball screen. Like they're
Yeah.
trying. It's just it's not working.
Mhm.
So defensively, like those are the two. If Ant's gonna miss 8 games, like TJ's got to be better. And hopefully it's just been bad matchups, slow start, and this isn't kind of indicative of like who TJ is as an NBA defender. And then at the point guard spot, like you kind of know what you're getting with Mike at this point. Like he's going to be okay in the pick and roll game because he's so good at like shooting those gaps in between the pick, and he's going to be solid off ball. But Mike, I mean, he can't play 25 minutes a night anymore. He kind of talked about it last night of like he needs to like mentally prepare himself to play 25 minutes because he's just at a different point in his career. I, you gotta get something better from Bones, Dante, or Rob defensively when Mike isn't out there. Because again, Mike's not solving any problems, but he is not making the defense worse by existing out there. Like Mike is a at this point in his career, like a slightly above average defender, but when you're replacing him with somebody that is significantly worse, it stands out a lot. Offensively, like they're gonna have to just Julius is probably going to be the de facto playmaking point forward all of these games. He's going to have to probably take more of a scoring burden because Ant is gone. And then this is a really good opportunity for Jaden to kind of cement himself as the third guy in the pecking order, which I think he's shown good signs so far. I mean, last night against Denver, he was excellent. I thought he was really good against Portland. He had pretty good game against LA. Indiana, like he was getting open looks and just bricking them, which is going to happen sometimes.
Mhm.
But, if Jaden is able to be a 17, 18 points a night scorer, that really raises the ceiling for this Wolves team, especially how he scores, where it's been, either open threes or dancing to the basket and getting like really close buckets. His mid range is still pretty solid, but to me, that's kind of what they have to do. Like on defense, unfortunately, they just need people to play better, whether that's getting into their man better, whether that's being more sticky when they are guarding people off ball. And then offensively, like playmaking Julius is going to have to show up. He's going to also have to score a ton. And then it's a big opportunity for Jaden.
I love how you started with the defense because that is definitely where you're going to leave your mark, especially one when you're playing inferior teams like Charlotte that are offensive minded and other teams like that. But also, just you mentioned it because there's no Anthony Edwards and you're going to be reliant on Julius and Jaden and Nas as primary players. As good as they are, you're not going to have nearly the same late game output without Anthony Edwards. I think the Denver game was the perfect example. At a certain point, a good team's just going to score and you have to score back. And Minnesota couldn't do it late because they don't have Anthony Edwards. So leaning into the biggest floor raiser that you can ever have, a great defense with the defensive player of the year in the paint. That's what you have to lean on. And I totally agree on the Terrence Shannon and Bones Highland front. It isn't effort. It's just literally decision making. It's
Yeah.
communication. It's jumping on the wrong player. One player is going to this player, and the other player thinks he's going to this player. And then boom, Tim Hardaway Jr. wide open from three. That can happen. You can't have Rudy Gobert out of the paint too often because you're trying to compensate for Jamal Murray. And granted, you're not going to play a Jamal Murray, Nikola Jokic pick and roll pairing every single game, but you need to be able to play high on that. And just, I think most of the games they've rebounded pretty well. Like maintain the possession game, don't run out of turnovers late in the fourth quarter as much as it was shot making. I thought what really stirred or steered that late game for Denver were the turnovers. They were on that 10-0 run, I believe, in the fourth quarter. I mean, they were just turning the ball over left and right, and then they hit a cold spell. So take care of the basketball. This Terrence Shannon, if Terrence Shannon can't replace Nickeil Alexander-Walker in 80% of ways, even defensively, that's going to be a big loss. And I think that right there is the biggest like general season takeaway. If Terrence Shannon can't replace that Nickeil spot, enough, like bring his unique strengths and then also not fall apart on what Nikhil brought, then we're going to have some issues with the bench, especially if Rob Dillingham isn't in the rotation. So, yeah.
Yeah, I would just add on to that too. I mean, Terrence Shannon Jr., it's 4 games, right? Like this could be just a really poor sample size. I mean,
Mhm.
maybe he's just in a funk. Like you never know.
Agreed. Yeah.
I would be willing to give him, again, like that 30 game mark of like at 30 games, if he's still where he is now, like that's a problem. I mean, just his advanced analytics, he has the second worst defensive rating on the team. He has a net rating of -25, and that's not ideal when you are, you've played 36 minutes and you're the worst defensive rating, or second worst defensive rating on the team. That's enough minutes where you can kind of point and be like, okay, something's going on there. Again, could just be, adjusting to NBA speed. He didn't really get to play a ton last night or last year. And this year, his matchups have been Luka, Obi Toppin for most of a game, Pascal for, the 9 minutes that he was out there. Like TJ, it might just take a few months to catch into speed. I think the other really concerning aspect of this is the Rob Dillingham of it all. I mean, if you look at, again, I mentioned Terrence Shannon as the second worst defensive player. Rob's only played 9 minutes, but he is currently the worst defensive rating on the team, and it is a 173.7. Like that is not ideal, is
No.
what I would say. Currently, when he is on the court, the Wolves have a 10% turnover percentage, meaning that 1 out of 10 plays when Rob Dillingham is playing is a turnover. That is also not ideal. Again,
It's been 10 minutes in
very
the season,
small.
though, in fairness. It's
Yeah,
been 10 minutes.
very small
Yeah.
sample size, but like it is kind of alarming, just
Mhm.
again looking at Rob of, man, 9 minutes, and it is the same we saw in preseason, the same we saw in summer league, the same we saw last season. Unfortunately, it's starting to be a trend that Rob is just a super high turnover prone, bad team defender type of player. But again, who knows? This will be a really good opportunity for him to prove that he can get a rotation spot. There will be minutes for him with Ant out. He's just going to have to capitalize on those minutes, which I think, again, if you're being optimistic, Rob can create his own shots and get open like Ant can. If you're being pessimistic, I mean, if there's one thing Finch hates out of a backup point guard, it's turnovers.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's one of the biggest storylines to really follow in these next games with Anthony Edwards out. And sure, I think there's truth to you can't, you can't write everything in pen until at least the new year flips. I think that's true. But then also, it's a great opportunity for Rob and Terrence Shannon to really prove that they're sustainable rotation players in a year they really need it. A lot of people have talked about the depth of this team with the assumption based on Rob's draft status and how Terrence Shannon performed in the playoffs, the bench would be a big strength this year. If they can't show up over these next 8 weeks or 8 games, it's going to make even if it's not cement, it's going to be a very big question going forward. And if they're not getting at least a couple really good, productive bench output games from both of them, and then defensively, it's mainly of Terrence Shannon because Rob is kind of who he is right now defensively. He needs to be able to show up just enough where you're not.
I do want to clean one thing up really quick. I was looking at Rob Dillingham stats without Rudy Gobert because I
Oh,
was
yeah.
doing an
Okay.
on-off Rob thing. With or without Rudy Gobert. So if you look at Rob's season as a whole, 13 total minutes. I just want to clean it up because we just mentioned Rob. All of those stats were without Rudy Gobert. In his minutes as a whole, all 13 of them, still the worst defensive rating on the team, 151.9, has a negative 30.5 net rating, and his turnover percentage, or the team's turnover percentage, actually jumps up to a ludicrous 25%. So 1 out of 4 plays with Rob Dillingham on the floor over those 13 minutes has resulted in a turnover. Defense gets a little better when Rudy's playing with them, but the turnover percentage gets significantly worse. So I would still say, unfortunately, point still kind of stands.
Yep. That's what really happens you know, when fire meets fire, you get more fire, I guess, with the turnover situation. And then the defensive situation, already not a good defender, no Rudy Gobert. Could only imagine how much worse that's getting. So it's I'm going to be watching for that. Going to be watching how he looks over these next few games, and and this is just my general take in these next 8 games. I think if it's a win in the Anthony Edwards stretch without him, the defense goes back to top 5 form. I think that's the single biggest floor setter for this roster. You get subtle signs from both Shannon and Rob. There's improvement, especially offensively, but also with Shannon more so defensively. and like honestly just be kind of averageish on offense. That shouldn't be too much to ask with the schedule they're playing, and also how you can. I mean, there's no Anthony Edwards, so it's probably a lot to ask them to be a top 5 offense. Be average defense or offensively. Go back to top 5 defensively. Increase that or that I can't talk today. Increase that communication on that end, and then see where things go. I do think it's a little unfortunate at a time where everybody's been talking about how critical it is that the team starts fast this year. That this unfortunate, you can't control it, but this obstacle gets in the way of that additionally. But it's still feasible they can start strong because, like you said, it's a favorable schedule if you lean into your just main roots.
Yeah, I mean, again, you got LA missing their stars, Charlotte, Brooklyn, Knicks is going to be a tough one, but then Utah, Sacramento before you have the 11-15 kind of rematch against Denver. I mean, if you're looking at that schedule, even without Ant, if this team is going to be a championship caliber team, like 5-3 is very realistic and probably what they should strive for. Um, if they didn't get it, who knows? I even if they are 6-6 and Ant is coming back for that Denver game or that Sacramento game, I think you're looking at that as probably like a success given how the season started. But be really nice if they could still get off to that hot start and you could kind of find out some things of just, what they have going on in the background of this team, whether it's Jaden, whether it's, where Mike is in his career, Rob, TJ. I will say the other thing with the Ant injury is hamstrings suck, right? I
They
mean,
suck.
they are going to reevaluate him in a week. They're going to probably do another MRI. He is going to have a little bit of a ramp up to get back. And there's nothing you can really do to heal a hamstring other than just don't use it. Sit around, elevate, throw ace wraps on it, ice it. I mean, you're really kind of just waiting for it to heal. And I mean, hopefully Ant heals quickly. Hopefully this is more of a precaution and it's a very minor hamstring strain, which we don't get grades or anything like that on players. We just get what the injury is. Hopefully it's minor and he is back in 2 weeks. But I mean, we've seen it with Justin Jefferson on the Vikings. We saw it with Cat a couple of years ago. Sometimes these hamstring strains linger for weeks. And if you come back too soon, your chance of re-injuring, re-tearing it just goes up exponentially. So I'm hopeful that he'll be back in a couple weeks, but also like it's impossible to say with hamstrings because it's not as simple as just, he has a broken finger, he'll be back when the bone's healed. It's really going to be dependent on MRI after MRI after MRI.
Fortunately, Anthony Edwards historically is Wolverine.
Yes.
So he could literally have his arm chopped off, it'll grow back with his history of injuries. So hamstrings are really hard. You never know. The 2-week thing to me just feels like a really safe estimate. It doesn't really feel like it's going to take 2 weeks. It might be fine in 6 days. It might be fine in 26 days. You don't know. So,
I would say it's probably more should be framed of like at least 2 weeks. I don't think he's coming
okay.
back early from that.
Yeah.
I think 2 weeks is realistic. I mean, again, he's out on the bench, standing up, walking around. Like if it was a moderate to severe hamstring strain, they are not having him on the bench walking around. They're telling him to go home and just like sit in your recliner for 2 weeks. That being said, like I would be pretty surprised if he came back early, just with how the Wolves traditionally are with injuries. They don't really let players come back early. They'd rather be cautious than force someone to play through something and injure themselves further.
And to add to the point of it's probably at least 2 weeks. Absolutely, with the Timberwolves staff, we've had a ton of mysterious, like, where's this player historically with some injuries, and also just even if you're feeling fine with a hamstring in a week, there's such unpredictable injuries and they can come out of nowhere. Even if you don't feel like it's going to be an issue, even if you
Yep.
felt fine in a week, like you said, framing it at least 2 weeks just to make sure instead of making it a 10-week injury. And also, I'm not putting this into the universe, but we've seen last year what a bad hamstring could do to a player like Jason Tatum or Tyrese Halliburton if you rush it back. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
if you don't take care of a hamstring, I think Kevin Durant in 2019 had that issue too, right? Was it a hamstring in 2019 he had?
Oh gosh, you're testing me. It was hamstring or calf or something like that. It was
It might
some lower body strain.
might have been a strained calf. But yeah, they're just really unpredictable. So you never know. But dude, I always love having you on the show. There's never short of drama in Timberwolves land, and we're diving in full deep on it. So just thank you so much for being on the show.
Oh, 100%. Anytime you need me, more than welcome and or more than happy to. I'm not welcome. I'm not saying you're welcome. Thank you. I don't know why I phrased it that way. Anyways, always happy to come on, Wilder. It's always a pleasure.
Andrew just unofficially claimed the ownership of the show just now.
This is my show now. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
You know what, Wilder, you can come back on the show whenever you feel like it.
Yeah. I mean, you said it though. The drama with this Wolves team is never ending. It does seem like, at least in the Anthony Edwards era, they can't do anything the easy way, whether it's a hamstring injury that pops up, whether it's losing easy games and having to win the hard ones. It's almost in this team's DNA that they have to make things a little difficult on themselves. So injuries are a little less predictable and controllable, but it kind of fits the vibe of the team.
They always hook us in, man. You never
Exactly.
know. You never know how they're going to do it. It's like a very unpredictable rom-com. You have no idea the next thing that's going to fall, and they're going to pull you right back into it. And then your hair is going to turn gray, and then everything is fine until it isn't last second. That's just the cycle of Minnesota sports. And Andrew, it's a pleasure having you on. Everybody, if you haven't subscribed to Wilder Wolves, would love to have you a part of the community. We'll be doing shows throughout the season on a consistent basis. We did a couple game reactions the first couple games. It's going to be kind of a mix of everything depending on the speed and flow of the season. For example, because it was a back-to-back at home, didn't really make a lot of sense to do an episode right after the Indiana game. So here we are, and now we get a second crack at the Lakers on Saturday after that performance on Friday last week. But thank you all so much. It is a pleasure. This is Wilder Wolves, Hall of Fame mode fandom.